Hi, and thank you for joining me for another of my Taking Control interviews. So today I'm joined by the lovely Julie Dennis, who works with organisations to help them support their employees through the menopause. So thank you so much, Julie, for talking to me. I really appreciate your time.
Oh no, very great pleasure. It's really good to connect with you again, Sarah.
I know it's been a while, hasn't it, since we've
It
spoken?
has,
It's
yeah.
lovely to see you again. Do you want to just explain what it is you do? Because you can do a better job than I can of that.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a menopause in the workplace specialist, and I partner with organisations across the UK to help raise awareness, educate, and improve the experience of people working through menopause. So I do that through training, workshops, policy support, e-learning, and what that means for the organisation are, improvements in gender parity, increase in retention, and setting themselves apart as a great place to work, essentially.
Yeah, because at the age that women go through the menopause, they've still got a lot to give. They've got a lot of experience in the workplace, and
Mhm.
there's a lot of research showing that people are leaving because they're struggling with their symptoms in the workplace and they're not feeling supported. And obviously,
Absolutely. I think it's about 10% of people going through menopause have left the workplace, valuable, talented employees, because typically we're at the peak of our performance and career when you go through menopause. Organizations can't afford to lose that talent.
yeah, and so it's definitely in their benefit to be supporting their employees, but also the benefit of employees who are going through it because they feel supported. It helps
Mhm.
with their confidence, things like that, doesn't it? And obviously it's quite a hot topic at the minute as well. So it's
Literally, yeah.
yeah, it's great to yeah, yeah, literally. It's great to be able to use kind of the buzz in the media around it to really highlight why women need to be better supported through the menopause, isn't it?
Yeah, and in fact, there's a government inquiry going on at the moment looking into whether there is enough support in the workplace. And one of the things they're looking at is whether menopause will become a protected characteristic. So under the Equality Act, we've got 9 protected characteristics, things like age, sex, disability, sexual orientation. And at the moment, menopause doesn't have specific protection, but that might be something that we see in the coming months and years. So that's really establishing menopause as, a priority for organizations to provide awareness and support around within the workplace, not just for the benefit of them and their employees, but as part of, legislative compliance too.
Which is brilliant because it can't just be ignored anymore, can it? It
Yeah,
needs to be
absolutely
addressed
not.
because there's
Mhm.
about half the population and we're a growing, an aging population as well. So the matter's only going to become more important, isn't it, as time
Yeah,
goes
there's
on?
literally no escape from menopause. Even if you're not going to go through it yourself, at some point you will be living with or working with someone who is. So, in exactly the same way that we invite everybody into the mental health conversation, regardless of your mental health, it's exactly the same with menopause.
Yeah, definitely. And what sort of things do people struggle with, do you find, when you've been speaking to them when they're at work, when they're going through the menopause?
So, I mean, there's a lot of research and studies out there now, helping to build the business case and provide information around this. And typically, the symptoms that come up as having the most impact on people's ability to do their job as well as they'd like to be able to tend to be fatigue, regularly comes at the top of the list. Uh, Trouble with low concentration levels, the flushes, which is the one that we hear talked about all the time, of course, but not everybody has flushes, anxiety, and the kind of brain fog, difficulty articulating, losing your train of thought mid-sentence, maybe firing off an email and looking back and think, oh goodness, I've missed complete words in that in a way that you never would have done in the past, and kind of second guessing yourself, this rising level of anxiety that you're not up to the job. And I think if you distill all the symptoms of menopause down into one, what you very often end up with is a lack of confidence in yourself and your ability to perform well at work and to manage relationships at home.
Yeah, and you can see why that has such a detrimental effect at work as well, and why people are panicking and why it leads to that loss of confidence. You've been doing this job for, may have been doing it all your life, and suddenly you don't feel that confidence in what you're doing and why it has an impact and why people need support. If you're in a meeting and you're having a hot flush, or you forget your train of thought, you feel embarrassed, and then you're worrying about how you're being portrayed or by it being seen by your colleagues.
Yeah, you worry about the perception of you. You're trying to present this, competent, professional persona who, who shouldn't be, or you don't want to be crying in the toilets, or, triple checking your work, or, suddenly becoming quiet in meetings where you would have been vocal in the past because you're concerned that you can't present your thoughts in as logical a manner as you have done in the past. So yeah, it can be really challenging for people.
Mm. And what sort of things could employees do then while they're at work to try and help with some of those symptoms, to ease them or manage around them?
I think the key thing is to educate yourself. Once we read a lot about how difficult menopause is, how challenging the symptoms are, and the range of physical and psychological symptoms and the impact that can have. And yes, menopause can be very challenging. However, there are choices for getting those symptoms under control. And for the majority of people, you are able to do that, but it's educating yourself so you know what those choices are, and then you can choose the right path for you. So the first thing is around educating yourself. And then in the meantime, while you're deciding on the kind of course of action for managing your symptoms, look at practical strategies in the workplace, taking regular breaks, saying no. I think, particularly as women, we tend to say yes to everything. Can you stay late? Can you take on this additional task? Can you organize the Christmas party? Can you get a birthday card for so and so? And it's like yes, 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 yes. But actually start to say no to things if you can. And don't feel that you have to provide an excuse for not being able to help. A simple polite no, I can't help you with that will suffice. Or alternatively, put some boundaries around your yes. Yes, I can help you with that. I've got a couple of hours on Tuesday, rather than taking everything on and thinking that you have to do it at that moment. The other thing you could do potentially is ask for extensions on deadlines, request more resources, or buddy up and meet up with other people who are going through the same thing that you are. Menopause can be a very lonely place, which is utterly ridiculous considering how many of us are going to go through it. However, it can become much less lonely when you hang out with other people who are going through similar things. So I think that the benefit of shared experience can't be underestimated.
Oh, definitely. And I think it's just that validation of what you're going through, isn't it? When you
Yeah.
share your experiences with other people.
Mm-hmm.
Like you say, kind of that whole knowledge thing and educating yourself. Also, I guess, understanding your body and the things that are happening to you. So if you know that mornings you have less brain fog, you have less flushes, organizing work, like more difficult tasks and meetings around when your body kind of allows you, really, and allowing for that. So kind of building up a bit of an awareness around yourself, so you don't plan meetings if you can help it in an afternoon where you maybe know that the brain
Yeah,
fog is
definitely.
worse, things like
If you
that.
have, depending on how much control you have over your diary and your tasks, you do exactly that. When is your brain likely to be the sharpest? When your energy levels the highest, and try and perform the more complex tasks during that time if you've got control. I mean, it depends on your role, of course. If you're in an office, it's much easier typically to manage that kind of thing. If you're a teacher, if you're a firefighter, if you're if you're in the police force, those things are much more complex. And I think one of the other difficulties around menopause in the workplace is that a lot of the research has been done around office-based people, and actually we need to expand our thinking around menopause and look a lot more in detail at different roles and different people, because menopause is a very individual experience. My experience of menopause is going to be very different from yours, and even if we have the same symptoms, our thoughts and feelings and behaviors around those symptoms and how we choose to manage them are going to be different too. So it's important that we look at it from an individual perspective rather than trying to kind of put in blanket changes.
Yeah, and especially for, I guess, people who do things like shift work as well, because they're
That's
very
right. Yeah.
restricted. They might find their shifts are around the times when things are worse, and it's finding other things that work for
Yeah.
them. There is a
Flexible working isn't available for everyone, and we need to stop throwing that out there as a kind of a fix for literally everything. Just request flexible working. Yes, everybody can request it, but it's not always possible for everyone depending on your role.
Yeah, and companies as well. So there's a lot of companies still who, don't feel that it works for them and aren't flexible as well. So
Yeah.
how can people approach their employees about getting more support then?
Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the challenges that people have at work. It's well, how can I access support? How can I ask for support? How can I talk about this topic that's actually really personal and makes me feel very uncomfortable? So the first thing I want to say is that, if you're menopausal, you absolutely don't have to share that information. You can't be outed for being in menopause. The flip side, of course, is that, the more honest and open you are, the easier it is then to get the support that you require. But I think if you're considering asking for support, the way you want to approach it is as a business meeting. This isn't a chat with your doctor. This isn't a counselling session. You're having a chat with your manager, for example, about how you can continue to stay on track at work. So what you want to be doing is giving specific examples of how what's happening to you is making it difficult for you to perform your job in the way that you're expected to at the moment. So, for example, if you are having very disrupted sleep, it might be very difficult for you to perform complex tasks first thing in the morning. If you are experiencing flushes, maybe you'd rather not have your camera on if you have a lot of virtual meetings. So think about what it is that's impacting you, how it's specifically impacting tasks at work, and then offer a solution as what you could do to manage that. Switching your camera off. Can you perform tasks at different time of day? If you are on shifts, are there other shifts that actually might work better for you? How often is it possible to take a break? Are there quiet rooms that you can take yourself off to? So think about what that solution would be and bring that to the meeting too. I think, the other thing is to recognize that you might have been worrying about this meeting for a long time and you've been plucking up the courage to do it, but it might be the first time that your manager has heard about menopause. If menopause training for managers isn't currently offered at your company, your manager might be like, what? I do not know how to deal with this. So give them the time to go and speak to HR, find out what policies and support are already in place, and then come back to you and see what would work. But it's an ongoing dialogue between two people. It's not two people drawing up battle lines, because in the end, all your manager wants is for you to do a great job, because that'll keep you happy and healthy, engaged. That will make them look good. And that's great for the business too.
Yeah, and also remembering, I guess, you're not the only one who's going to be going through it. It's something that everybody will go through, and yes, their symptoms may vary, and it may be that they don't struggle, but all females will go through it, and it's something for them. I guess when you're going through it, it's not when you're speaking to your manager about it, knowing that other people, it will benefit others as well, and that you won't be the only one going through this. But yeah, it's great advice, and having a think beforehand, so preparing before your meeting, thinking about solutions, so you're going with
think really carefully. Approach that meeting in the same way that you would a job interview or a performance management review. You wouldn't walk into one of those meetings and try and wing it. You'd think really carefully beforehand about the questions you want to ask, about the benefits that you'd like to receive, and about the outcomes you want for that meeting. So approach that kind of chat about menopause in exactly the same way. And if you feel that you don't want to speak to your manager for whatever reason, sometimes we just don't get on with our managers. Who else could you speak to? Can you speak to someone in your HR team? Do you have mental health first aiders? Are there employee networks that you could go and talk to?
Yeah, no, it's great advice, that having to think about it before, and who you want to speak to, so that you're going with suggestions. It's much easier for them to support you, I guess, if you've gone and said, well, what I could do is this, this, and this. It's not them having to think of things. It's much easier for them to say, well, actually, yeah, that we could make that
would work. Yeah.
So that's great. And how can managers support their employees then through the menopause?
So, the key thing for managers is to be open to conversation. If somebody wants to talk to you about menopause, don't go run screaming for the hills or, bat them away in the direction of HR or anything like that. Your role as a manager is to signpost and support your team, whatever they may be going through, to help them to continue to enjoy working within your organization. So being open to conversation, being able to signpost and support. As a manager, you're not expected to be an expert in menopause, any more than you're expected to be an expert in fertility or, dyslexia or bereavement or long COVID or anything else that any of your team may be going through. But what you are expected to be able to do is to consider adjustments, to be able to signpost to other resources within your organization, like your employee assistance program, for example, or occupational health. So it's important for managers to familiarise themselves with internal resources. If you've got a menopause policy or guidance, make sure you've read it as a start and, refer to it on a regular basis. And I think it's also up to managers to promote a menopause inclusive environment. And, you know, an easy way of doing that is just to let your team know that you're open to conversation. You know, just the next time you overhear something around menopause, just send a message to your team saying, I saw this program on TV, I attended a manager's training on menopause, I was having a chat with my friend about menopause, but just make it clear that it's a word that you are comfortable using, because in the end it is just a word. You know, we shouldn't get hung up on it. And, you know, I guess it's the same with fertility, you know, this kind of stigma, and, you know, it's not something that I want to talk about. I don't want to be seen as someone who isn't able to do my job any longer. And of course, you're not in any of these situations. You just might need some adjustments put in place to provide equity.
Yeah, and to help with those physical symptoms that you're feeling, if you were unwell with because you were poorly, then there'd be things put in place and it would be understood that you were ill and that was what was being put in place. And I guess for managers, just educating themselves on the menopause so they have an idea, especially if one of their employees comes to them and says, I'm going through this and I'm struggling, then having that understanding about, as you mentioned, their policy in the workplace and what can help, but also just a general understanding of how the menopause can impact people so that they understand what it is and have some empathy towards their employees.
Sure. And, you know, manager training for menopause is absolutely crucial. You know, it's as important as awareness, if not more, because when you look back at the employment tribunals where menopause has been cited, and they have tripled over the last 3 years, by the way, very often is a breakdown in communication between the manager and the employee. So making sure that managers can confidently and competently have a conversation about menopause within legal guidelines is absolutely critical to making sure an employment tribunal doesn't land on your lap.
Yeah, so understanding the kind of legalities around it, the moral side of it, but having an understanding of what that person's going through so that you don't say something to them like, just get on with it, you're just being ridiculous.
Precisely, yeah.
Something like that. Again, like they do with fertility, it's just having an understanding so you can empathize and then have an honest but supportive conversation with your employee around it. So yeah, having that training. And I think everybody's becoming a bit more open to the fact that more support is needed now in workplaces, aren't they?
It is. I mean, you know, like you said, it's literally a hot topic right now. You know, you can't move for moving something around, reading stuff around menopause. And that's just going to, after the summer period, that is going to peak again, because we've got Inclusion Week at the end of September, and then in October we've got Menopause Awareness Day on the 18th, and in fact the whole of October is typically treated as Menopause Awareness Month now, so everybody will be talking about it. And you know, my diary is already filling up for that month for people who are looking for training for managers, for awareness sessions, menopause champions, or, you know, providing consultancy advice to HR teams so that they can introduce a menopause program that's going to make everyone feel valued, supported and heard.
Yeah, which is brilliant that so many people are prioritizing, which is great. And how can people find you then if they want to speak to you about advice for managers or booking in training, things like that?
Sure. So I tend to hang out on LinkedIn quite a lot. So please come and connect with me on LinkedIn. Julie Dennis, Menopause in the Workplace Specialist, or otherwise you can pop over to my website, www.juliedennis.net. It's got a whole load of resources and information on there, and a contact page too. Or otherwise, feel free to email me direct, julie@juliedennis.net.
Oh, thank you. And I'll share all those details when I post the video as well, so that everybody has the details there for you. Is there anything like a final thought on what the most important thing is for either employees if they're going through the menopause and struggling at work, or for managers to remember? Is this one sort of final thought you could share?
Yeah, I think, you know, the more you talk about it, the easier it becomes. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is normalize menopause. And the only way that's going to happen is for you to start not crowbarring it into conversation, but using it in conversation. So I think, you know, let's just finish this session today, and I'm going to issue a challenge to everyone watching this session. And my challenge to you is to have a conversation about menopause every day for the next 3 days. And that can be at home or at work.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love that, having a challenge. Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you so much. That's been really interesting for me as well to hear those and have some different thoughts on some of the things that, you know, even things like how people cope, you know, everybody's different in how they go through it, but also everybody's workplaces, certainly after COVID, have changed. So and I keep saying this, one size doesn't fit all for support, does it? And it just highlights that again about the different jobs people do, how they will struggle in different ways. So it's been really informative. Thank you so much for your time and your advice.
Oh, thanks for having me, Sarah. It's really good to catch up.
Oh, thank you. You too. Take care.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.